Wardens of Winter, welcome back to Winter Wolf's Den, where the fire is warm, the take's hotter, and the P90s are always locked and loaded. Tonight, we step through the gate into one of sci-fi's greatest adventures, Stargate SG-1, a show that delivered legendary episodes of high-stakes action, deep mythology, and Jack O'Neill's finest sarcasm, but also some episodes that felt like they were written by a malfunctioning Malp. From epic battles against the Goa'uld to whatever shenanigans the team was getting into that week, we're breaking down the best and worst of SG-1. So dial in the coordinates, hope the iris is open, and whatever you do, don't let the NID take over. I think this one was your pick, SG-1. Is this one you added to the list?
This is one that I add to the list due to the me not really remembering the series that well.
Did you pick it up on the first run, or was this like a weekly thing and you forgot about it, or did you get SG-1 later on when you were bored on streaming like I did?
Later on, when streaming was first coming out, and it was one of the first series that was added to streaming.
True, and you must have seen the OG movie, I'm sure.
Of course, yes.
But dude, you might have even been there on my birthday. I think a bunch of us went on my birthday to go see this. You might have been in that group of people. It was right around that time. I think you were stationed there.
Yeah, it was either that or me and my dad went, because of course, like I said, my dad's a huge sci-fi fan. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, the original. I love the original movie. I love the entire idea of gates all over the galaxy and human beings, that have been populated everywhere as slave labor, but Earth uniquely stood to rise against them. Yeah, like I just love that. I love the core idea. That's when they made a show out of it. It was weird to see new people and not Kurt Russell and not David Spade picking up the roles. David Spader, I always mix them two dudes up. Total, that would have been a whole different movie. Imagine getting a Joe Dirt Stargate. Imagine getting a Joe Dirt Stargate, though. Dude, I think I'm ready for that. I think I'm ready for that movie.
Mic 1,
Why don't you talk into the microphone? I got a backup mic right here. Check 1, 2.
That would have been okay. Dude, imagine what kind of the fireworks diatribe he could go on from like other planets. So you got whisker do's, whisker don'ts. Like, there'll be some funny stuff in there. But SG-1 is kind of like, or Stargate in total is kind of like a lesser than franchise. I think it gets a bad rep, but it's got the movie, it's got like 3 or 4 series, it's got online games, it's got stuff, it's got novels, but I feel like it never comes up when people talk about like the big dogs,
Well, I think because it came out later, and the one thing I did like about Stargate is that they didn't do a sequel. They made a series off of the movie. Yeah. Instead of doing Stargate 2, Stargate 3, Stargate Forever,
Stargate Unlimited.
Instead they went with the series, and then the series had spin-offs with SG Atlantis, and I think they had one more. I just remember Atlantis in the original.
Yeah, no, there was a third one. I think it was Universe. I think it was Stargate Universe. I think SGU. But yeah, they did a couple of straight to Sci-Fi Channel movies. Because I think they had, based on it, I think the Atlantis show had a couple of spinoffs. I think one of them was called Covenant. I think, but nothing. You're right though. Nothing ever went back to theater. Like nobody ever came back to reprise those roles. Those characters were absorbed into the show. A couple of the supporting characters were in the OG season. In episode 2, we see one of the guys from Russell's team get infected with a Goa'uld parasite, and then I think the native kid that kind of became part of the group in the movie. I think he was early on in the series too, but Apophis had taken him over and he was still doing the glowy eye thing because he had gotten taken on the show. But we're doing our best and worst of tonight. We're going to go best of first, and we'll see you guys again in a little while for worst of for Stargate SG-1. And I noticed a couple of interesting corollaries between both our best and our worst of. You can stack them neatly next to Star Trek: The Next Generation and get a very similar but kind of very different episode of the same type in the two series. And that's funny because obviously TNG came out like 5 years before this show, but these episodes were timed at very similar junctions as these other Trek episodes that I'll talk about.
And I bet there was a lot of overlap with writers back then, and they try to get ideas. Ideas work from here, so let's go ahead and just try it for our own and see what happens.
Oh, for sure, man. And when you're talking about serialized TV like that, we know all these shows get the amnesia episode, they get the enemy within episode,
the disease episode,
we get the cliptage episode.
And then there's always the public announcements type episode.
Yep, they always got the new crew. The new crew member joins the team episode. During the mid-series run kind of thing, when things like we were talking about last week, like when Cousin Oliver shows up, you're done. Like it's kind of over.
Yeah.
And that happened here too, as they got longer in the season, and Richard Dean Anderson took off for a little while. I think he had a return later, and then he was gone again. It was nice seeing MacGyver do his thing. Good character.
Yeah, they also killed off the doctor a few times, from my understanding. The archaeologist.
The archaeologist. I think that the base doctor was around for a while and then just left. Terrell Rothery. Yeah, Daniel Jackson, played by Michael Shanks, was he was there and then he was gone. But when they wrote him off in a dumb way, where they gave him the spiritual treatment and he had ascended or some nonsense, if I remember right. It's been a while since I did the deep cut. But the best of episode, let's just jump right into that. Window of Opportunity.
Yep.
If I got the title right. And it was season 4, episode,
I want to say 8.
6, 7, 8. Oh, that's somewhere.
I think it was episode 8, season 4, episode 8.
Guys, it's on Amazon Prime Video. Go check it out. You're going to be disappointed. It's in very standard definition viewing, which was ugly. Dude, it was a tough watch. I thought there was something wrong on the settings on my TV. I forgot that it was from 1997, and Amazon does not have a remastered, Netflix ready 1080p 4K option. Like, that was not there. It was tough.
Yeah, they didn't put that through the what do they call that? The upgrader. Yeah, the upscale. That's it.
Dude, they had a scene at the beginning of this episode where they're all in their the desert themed fatigues. They get like the beige, the color, like that color scheme, and the background is like it's like this pink sunset kind of thing when they're at the archaeology site, right?
Yeah.
There's a scene early on where O'Neill, Jackson, and Carter are all coming down the stairs towards the camera, but it's far enough back I couldn't tell any of them apart. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know what to do here.
You did tell a little bit about who they were based on where they were standing. Like, Jack's going to be standing over them as the leader watching.
Right.
Daniel and the doctor, they're going to be down there set up the equipment. Carter, they want to get everything set up properly. So you could tell by the way they were, but no, you couldn't make out any detail of their face or body features.
No, I was going to say
they were like just blob in background. Looked humanish.
There were 3 beige blobs with tan pixel faces and 1 beige blob with brown pixel face. And I'm like, that's Teal'c, only black dude on the show. But it was just fine. It jumped out at me right away where I was like, oh man, I forgot, like, in 97, when everybody had big blocky TVs, this is probably some cutting edge shit. People were like, oh my God, look how amazing this looks. Just like a PS1. PS1 graphic, PS2 graphics. People
going from the NES to the was it Super Nintendo?
Super Nintendo was next. Yeah, 8-bit to 16, same thing, same vibe. But it had been a long time, because I think when I watched SG-1, I think I caught it on Netflix. I think a couple of years ago, and they had a 1080p ready to roll. So it didn't look terrible.
So, but I think they probably just took the original show run, like what they released at the network, and just grabbed that and put it up and just digitally ripped it to put on the server.
So this episode came up on a bunch of lists. It's not one that's jumped out at me. I didn't really remember it, but I know you mentioned that your wife is a big fan of
this episode.
And when you told, that's what I was going to say. And when you told her this was the show up for this week, she was like, dude, you guys are going to love this one.
Yeah, she. This was a big one for her when we first brought up SG-1 before we found our episodes, doing our research through our websites. If you're going to throw that up here real quick, what website we use?
Episode.ninja.com. It was wrong last week.
There we go.
Episode Ninja is not a thing. Episode.ninja is a thing. Ta-da.
Okay. So she's like, "Are you guys doing the Groundhog's Day episode?"
Yep.
Because of course, we always refer to it as Groundhog's Day. Yeah,
that's an episode type. Like 10 shows have that show.
So when I read out, she goes, "I think that is," and when she went and looked it up, she goes, "It is, it is." Y'all are gonna have so much fun with this one. So,
yep, for sure. I'll make the comparison now just to get it out of the way. But the TNG episode that I referenced, of course, was Cause and Effect. I don't remember I think it was a similar season. It was like 3 or 4 on TNG. But there's a big difference here in their Groundhog's Day approach. On the TNG episode, it was some serious shit. Like, every segment of that episode ended with the Enterprise being destroyed. And because the entire crew was caught up in a time distortion effect, they all forgot and had to reset. So it was super frustrating to see them try to work through what was going to happen on the next iteration, until Data basically cheated and revealed that he was not affected by the time distortion, and revealed kind of the mechanics of the episode. It's like 40 years old, but I'm not going to spoil it for folks. But so it was all super serious. This episode on SG-1 stayed very much in line of the humor and the sarcasm that SG-1 did, especially with O'Neill. Because when he realized that there was a loop going on, he did his due diligence as like the military guy for a while, but he started to have his fun with it as they went on. I thought that was really funny. They had their moments for sure.
Oh, the him, and I'm glad he wasn't alone. Having Teal'c with him and Teal'c joining in the escapades later was outstanding. When
they were golfing, I chuckled out loud because Teal'c's got on like regular just rec clothes, like casual clothes, not the uniform. But they roll out Jack O'Neill and like the traditional golf outfit with like the pull up socks and the breeches. You got the pom pom hat. And of course, your tagline right there is right in the middle of it, where the general's like, "Colonel O'Neill, why are you out of uniform?" And he's like, "Not my backswing." It's hilarious.
I just want to know the world that they were shooting the balls into. What are they doing? What if it was a super primitive world and they just see these balls coming out of space?
We're under attack. Did you catch the Teal'c joke in that scene? They had a pretty good. It was like a two-liner between him and O'Neill, and O'Neill was like, "Hey, how far do you think that was?" And Teal'c's like, "I don't know, about 8 billion miles." And O'Neill's like, "It's got to be a record." He tees up another one and sends it through. It looked like he hooked it to the right.
He hooked it too. He hooked that one.
But they worked in some humor, and I'm like, because I know this is what Stargate does, it didn't annoy me that they weren't taking not the gimmick of the episode, but like the situation seriously. And they had and those jokes came like 40 minutes into like the hour-long episode. So they had already run through the serious business part and then the frustration part. They avoided the nobody believes us bullshit, which I'm so thankful for. I'm so sick and tired of that. That's my sick and tired for this episode.
So they had a little bit at first.
Very little, and not
the first couple of times, because it's going to be hard for them to pick up. But I love where there's like, you don't have to send me to old Dot Flanagan, and then next thing you know, like, what are you doing? Let's see my eyes.
I love, but what I'm saying is, it's like, it always comes up on TNG too, where they exist in a world where they know temporal distortions are a routine thing. Then I'd be like, listen, if I was the captain, you come into my office and say, "Captain, I think we're stuck in a loop again." I'd be like, "Fucking A, here we go." I wouldn't disbelieve you instantly and then send you for like psych counseling. They're like, "All right, let's get Data, let's get Geordi, let's sort this shit out, scan for whatever." They put us through a little bit of that in this episode where they're doing the necessary medical exams. But by the end, they're all pretty bought into, now time's basically just re-looping and we got to figure this out. But there was no ticking clock. The base wasn't going to be destroyed on their end or anything like that. It was just like, let's figure this out and have fun.
Yeah, they had to figure out the language, so they had to figure out how or what they have to do to stop it. The part that I really liked, and it was revealed at the end, is that was it like 7 more gates that were trapped in this loop.
Oh, dude, yeah, it was like 15. It was a lot. It was like, because they showed them up on the screen in like a diagram where the SG-1 gate was in the middle, and then it like spider webbed out to like a bunch of other ones. It was a lot.
But the thing that I liked is that they were stuck in a time loop, but the rest of the universe still continued on, and then they caught back up to them. So like they were in a time loop for about a month and a half. And so
like that.
Yeah, but a month and a half aged in the normal universe while they were just stuck in that time loop. So I thought that was a really good point out, instead of, oh, you start that day over, now that day ends and everybody is back on the same timeline. And I'm like, it wouldn't work that way. This was a much better educated version of the time loop story.
I like the ending too for a whole different reason. I think a lot of shows would have gone the route where the team would have gone back through the gate on their last run with like a new piece of an idea they were going to use. And then they would have tried to destroy or disable the machine. And that was their intention. They were going to try to undo the machine, because another alien archaeologist that they had been working with on site for reasons of his own was trying to manipulate a machine that was gathering like the power of a mass coronal ejection, and figured out that it created a time loop that he wanted to manipulate for personal reasons. They ended up building on that a little bit, which was fine. But the team had eventually decided they were going to go shut it all down. But when they get there, this dude knew, he was aware of the loop. He's part of it. He knew he had to shield the altar that they were working from, because they were going to come back and try to shut him down. So then they actually had to like talk him out of it and reason with him
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't guns blazing. It wasn't
grenades and C4.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, it was a educated what scientists would do. Yes, you have the military side of it, but they're scientists as well, and I like that they played into that part of it instead of just coming in with like full commando and.
Right. But what I like specifically about it is that it's O'Neill that talks the scientist down and not Daniel or Carter. And as the scientist is explaining it, he's like, I lost my wife. She was my everything, died unexpected, this and that. Even if I could go back in time, it wouldn't matter because she had a congenital heart defect, so it wouldn't matter. So O'Neill jumps on that point and he's like, so what's the end game here? Like, you bring her back, you touch her face like you want, you say goodbye, and you watch her die again every 12 hours forever. Like, that's the play. And the guy's like, okay, I don't know. And then O'Neill's like, yeah, you could let this whole thing go, but we got 15 planets that are stuck in the same day forever now. Is that fair? Like, is that a thing? Can you do that? And then it's rule of three. It escalates one more time. And the guy, he looks like he's going along, but then he snaps and he's like, you don't understand. And O'Neill hits him with I lost my son. I'm like, I don't think you've talked about your son in 2 seasons, but okay. But at least you punched back on it, which was cool.
Yeah.
So I thought there was a nice little flow and escalation there to how they resolved that.
Yeah, and they didn't play past the talking stick where it was just O'Neill doing it. It wasn't then the next person step up and give his reason, and the next person step up and give their reason. No, they stuck it with the leader to get this done.
I just thought it was a nice touch that it was O'Neill that wasn't going to make the scientific rationalization, and he was the guy who would have had the plan to just go in and bomb the altar in the first place and boot the dude. And that's what they tried to do, except Teal'c went in first and got obliterated by a shockwave from a force field or whatever.
Which is the great part, is because they realized they were in a time loop and actually started believing him off the bat because of how he was talking. He's like, have you ever heard Colonel O'Neill say that?
Yeah, the really funny part was in one of the loops, they were in their mission briefing and he's predicting what Carter is going to say. And he was like, how else could I know that? And she says, well, maybe you read my report. And dude just like straight up looks at her.
He read his report?
It was pretty funny. But I mean, those are the beats that separate SG-1 from being like a B Star Trek The Next Generation clone or a DS9 clone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, MacGyver sells that character as being I was retired because of personal tragedy, but I'll come back. I'll stay back. I'm back on the job, but I'm going to complain. He doesn't dump on the general all the time like New Trek would do, like Discovery, where there's no respect for chain of command at all, ever. He's very much falls in line when the general tells him, like, fall in line kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It provides for a much better flow, I think, on a military-esque theme show.
Yeah. The ending, though, the very ending, where every morning in the time loop, he was eating Fruit Loops. And at the very end, when the time loop's gone, he's eating oatmeal. And he's like, if you've been eating Fruit Loops for the last month, you would appreciate a change of flavor.
Oh, big old keeping healthy.
And then they went back like, you could do anything you wanted with no consequence. Did you do anything? And then they had like this whole montage of stuff that he did. And it was freaking hilarious. And he just looks, he's like, just gave him the look.
Dude,
he didn't have to say anything. He just
not that he gave him the look, dude. He gave Carter the look, and they held on that for like 7 seconds. And I was like, this is borderline creep show. Because of course the no consequences montage involved him handing the general a piece of paper out of uniform. And the general says, why are you out of uniform, O'Neill? And he goes, so I can hand you my resignation and do this. And then he grabs Carter, just plants one on her, like gives you the whole Gone with the Wind sweep and the Casablanca sweep. It was pretty funny. Listen, I mean, it earned its moments for sure.
And it all started with them having fun in games, is when him and Teal'c learned how to juggle. Teal'c.
Making sure you're saying the right dude. Yep.
Yeah,
put the camera up. We're talking about that.
It was Teal'c where he was juggling. Like he started, and then Teal'c jumped in, and then they're both up there just juggling and doing the high toss. And
dude, the best part of that was the cutaway where Jackson's talking at the blackboard, and when he looks back, and like you said, it's both of them doing 3 balls at the same time with the high arch. It was that's funny. Those visual gags are always funny. But I feel like Teal'c got handed like a rough ride in this episode because he's talking to O'Neill and O'Neill's bitching about starting the same day 5 seconds after Jackson asks him a question and he never knows what the question was, so he can't answer it. Yeah. And Teal'c's like, you think you've had it rough? And it just goes into him getting a door smashed in his face. That's how his day starts. Door in the face. Funny stuff, dude. Their visual gags were on point. The timing was good.
Yeah, it was a very fun episode. I just see why people consider this the best. Is it was just a fun episode that used science and stayed within genre for the show to have just some fun with it.
Yeah, no shooty bang bang, no go out. I mean, what's his face fires a phaser like thing and stuns Daniel to kind of set off the arc. That's it was the mechanism that just started the loop. Because then O'Neill and Teal'c grab the dude and explains, and that actually it's a good explanation for why only Teal'c and O'Neill are affected, because they had grabbed the dude that shot Jackson with the phaser
when they got hit by the light.
Right, the blast hit only them because Carter was off to the side with Daniel out of the way. So, I mean, a lot of the things, even they seem inconsequential, but they make sense, and I think that's what we talk about. Qualified writing all the time is somebody figured that out. Somebody thought enough to say, hey, if we want to make this episode work and have it so there's a time loop, but they have to reconcile with some people believing, some people not, how can we get half the team out of the way? And that made perfect sense. Daniel took a phaser by the guy that was trying to do some sneaky shit. Yeah. And Carter's like the medic. She's the scientist, the doctor, kind of. She did what she did.
And I mean, this episode had more than just comedy in it. It had a very heartfelt message of this guy. All he wants to do is see his wife again. Mm-hmm. And they believe, and like the whole mechanism was built to try to save them and their time. And then it only happens every 50 years when that corona to have enough power to do it. But they never figured it out, and they finally just turned it off and let themselves die.
And that was a bigger part of the plot that we even talked about, because the guy that was working on the machine wasn't from that culture. He was somebody else that had found, like, he had come through a gate and landed there on reputation or on research that technology may exist. But the bigger story was an advanced earlier society had come up against these near catastrophic coronal ejections or whatever. They built this machine thinking they could go back in time to stop it, or to channel its power and stop it, or whatever it was, created the time loop and realized they could never get it to work. So they just let the prime directive happen and their society just died.
Yeah.
They couldn't not get out of their own way. They couldn't get out of their own way. I knew I could get that.
Yeah.
So that was deep too. That was kind of a deep question to ask in an episode like this.
Yeah. So if you guys haven't seen SG-1, I highly suggest that you do go ahead and get to episode 4, or season 4, episode 8, and you would really, really enjoy it. I promise you. If you like the stuff that we've already talked about before,
just hit him with the title again, just so they can get a visual.
Window of Opportunity.
Thank you. I forgot also.
So if you kind of enjoy what we've been doing here with the best and worst, you kind of know what our flow is. So if you agree with us, I guarantee you're going to enjoy this episode.
I would say the same, and it's in a show that blends decent comedy with the actiony, shooty stuff, the sci-fi stuff. I can see why this gets the pick of best of SG-1, because it probably is the show at its best, at its tightest, with the comedy and balancing an interesting situation, especially when dealing with the time travel trope that I think is played out in a lot of other series and done exactly the same way. They took some turns with this and it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it really did.